Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So as promised, I am recording the solution for the midterm exam. Before I start solving the questions, I would like to give you some very important instructions about writing the midterm exam. So as you can see here, your exam is multiple choice and you have to be very careful while you are writing down your answers on this sheet, the OMR sheet. Here you have to pay attention to a few things. One, you have to write your name very clearly. Second, in the date, write the date of your exam. In the period, don't write the period, rather you have to write your section number. You have to be very careful, because if you don't write the section number, then there will be a problem while I am looking for your name, because here there is no option for student ID. So your name and your section number is the most important information. There are 5 choices for each question, but in the exams you will see that you will have just 4, or some of the questions are true false, so there are just A, B. Use black pencil and darken the circle very well, and try not to erase the answers. When you are confident that this is the answer, then only you mark the answer here on the circles. There are 20 questions in the exams also, and this sheet has 20 question set. Once you are finished, you can hand over the question paper and the answer to the invigilator and leave the class. You cannot use any electronic device. Any means no mobile phones, no calculators, nothing, no watches. And most importantly, when you have any problem in any of the questions, you must write your problem on the question paper. Do not ask the invigilator. Silently you have to solve the questions. If any question you feel it is wrong, or there is a problem in the questions, you must just write down the problem on the question itself. Do not ask the invigilator. Okay, so when the question, when it comes back to me, I will see what was the problem. If there is a real problem, then I'll see what to do. You don't have to worry about that. But don't disturb the invigilator. You do your thing, your answers quietly. There are no calculations required, so you don't need any calculator, but you have to pay attention to the questions, read them carefully. Secondly, most importantly, you must return the question papers along with this sheet. On the question paper, you must write your full name and ID. Okay, full name, ID, and also section number there also. Do not forget to give the question papers back with this answer sheet. Otherwise, you may find some problem, because if this sheet may go wrong, or there is a problem in recording the answers, then I can use the question paper to give you scores. But if you don't submit the scores, it will be difficult for me to do so. So with this, these are the instructions I want to give. You have time to ask me questions regarding these instructions. All the best. Now let's start with the sample, and I will solve each question. I'll try to explain as much as possible, which is really required for you. So first question is define operations research by fill in the blanks. This question, before I start answering this question, let me tell you that this is just a sample. The real questions may be in different form. So you should not say at the end of the day that these questions were different than what I asked in your exam. Okay, so let's start the first answer. Define operations research by filling in the blanks. So application of quantitative scientific methods to take decisions or to help decision making and support in business organizations with the objective of improving the quality of managerial decisions. So this is the answer which is already there. You just have to pay attention to the definition. This may appear in the exam in another form also. Then the second question is, what is decision making? So it is a process of selecting between two or more alternatives. Now one of the students in one group asked, if there are not more than two or more alternatives, then isn't there any decision making? Can OR be applied there also? When there is just one choice, then the decision making is not so technical or scientific in nature. You have to just take a decision whether you are going to buy it or not buy. So those areas do not fit technically in the definition of decision making as in OR, because in OR we have to select between two or more alternatives. So this is what we learned in the class. It's a process of selecting between two or more alternatives. Now what are the two main ways of decision making? One is using numbers. So numbers means quantitative, it is explicit and articulated. Yani it is very clear. Explicit means clear, which can be seen, shown, and articulated, it can be represented well. You can explain it. There are clear steps. Okay, and qualitative, it's opposite of the quantitative, implicit and unarticulated. All right. Now this one, the general operations research model, as we have learned, Z max min subject to constraints. Subject to constraints. This is the general OR model, and when we go to a particular problem, this model may take different forms. In the case of profit that we solved in the third chapter, the Z became max. In the transportation problem, Z became min. So either of the two, either max or min, the objective function will be, and there will be constraints within which we have to find the objective function. Where did the idea of operations research originate? In England, and we saw that it appeared during the world wars. So we are not confusing with which war, one or two. We just say it appeared during the world wars, and you should always remember the video that we saw in regarding the origin of the OR. Sixth question is the process of handling real world problems and describing them in mathematical terms. It's modeling. So In modeling, what we do, there are 3 steps which will come later again. So we just try to replicate the problem. Again, when we are doing this, just relate with this one, the video that we saw, how the scientists or the engineers, they replicated the problem of the British Army, and then they helped the British Army to solve the problem. That is called modeling, which is not a technique to solve operations research problem. Linear programming is really a technique. We have seen it. Data analysis is not a technique of operations research, rather we do this in research methodology. Goal programming, we didn't learn it, but it is a technique of operations research. And integer programming also, you must have seen, it's written there, it's a technique. Question number 8, the activities carried out in an organization are called operations. Any amaliyat, any activity that is carried out in an organization like HR, IT, marketing, all of them. Question number 9, the best solution in operations research is called, they are called optimal solutions. Okay, so optimal is a word, we have been hearing it, and we are very clear now with the name optimum. Question number 10, stochastic models give same result with same variables and parameters. No, that's not correct. The correct answer is false. It's actually stochastic models they give different results. It's opposite of the deterministic model. So is linear programming a tool in deterministic model? Yeah, it's a tool in deterministic model. When is a model called feasible? When all the constraints, so as you see here in this model is feasible, because why is it feasible? Because Z will be maximized or minimized taking care of the constraints. So this model is feasible. So when all the constraints are satisfied. Name the methods for solving transportation methods. So we learned MODI, VAM. You have to remember the full forms also. Least cost and northwest corner. So 4 methods we saw. Are the resources of an organization unlimited? No, absolutely not. We learned this in the first class only, that since the organizations are limited, the managers have the job to maximize their use. OR is needed to make the best use of available resources. We just answered this question. Decision making can be quantitative and non-quantitative. Let's look inside. It's true or false. Explicit, articulated, and non-quantitative or qualitative. You can also have another word for this so that you don't get confused in the exam. It's implicit and unarticulate. So the answer is true. It's right. Write down the 3 steps in modeling. So we understanding the real world. Okay, so you saw the picture also. Understanding the real world, then assuming the real world, and what? Then you construct the model, constructing the model. These are the 3 steps in modeling. What is the process between choosing two or more alternatives? We just answered this. This is decision making. Now let's answer the 19th question. Write down the steps in OR problem solving. Number 1 is formulation. Okay, and formulation, what we do? We define the problem. So in transportation, the problem was defined as to minimize the cost. We made the table and defined the problem. Then the next is modeling. Modeling is to arrange the factors or the variables factors or what variables. Then the third, analysis. So in analysis, what we do, we select and apply the OR tool like transportation method or linear programming or simulation, whatever. Fourth one, final stage, is solution. So in the solution stage, what we do, we get the best, find the best alternative. Now the OR just provides the best alternative. It doesn't mean that the manager will have to necessarily take this decision. He has several choices, so she can decide to adopt this answer or not. But OR, if it is a deterministic tool, will give an answer and that answer will be the decision. But now the manager will take the decision based on many other factors also. Restrictions on resources is called constraint. OR is what? Easy, we just solved it. OR is a quantitative method. And we have also solved this one, that model is an abstract representation of reality. As in computer programs, in OR, what we have to do is learn the steps. Without learning the steps, we cannot solve OR problems. So in computer programming and also in OR, this is called algorithms. In which models the output is fully determined by the parameter values and the initial conditions. It is the deterministic models. Deterministic model. If all the constraints are satisfied, the model is feasible. Earlier we solved this question again, it's coming. The two main varieties of models are physical or iconic and mathematical. Okay, mathematical. Blueprint of a house is an example of what? I hope you have guessed. Analog model, which is in between the physical and mathematical model. The parameter values are constant. They don't change. They are fixed. Variables indicating the objective function are called decision variables. These are the variables on which the managers decide how they are going to improve or maximize or minimize the objective function. Consider a firm that sells a product. The product costs 5 reals and sells for 20. Write the model that computes the total profit. So when you write the model, just pay attention to clearly mentioning everything, plus 20x minus 5x, where z is equal to objective function, x is equal to variables, and or let's make it decision variable, and 25 parameters are parameters. In the equation z is equal to 5x plus 3y, what is the name for the values x and y? X and y are what? X and y are variables. And what is 5 and 3? Parameters. Okay, so these complete the questions, general questions related to other chapters. but there are many questions related to one chapter, that is transportation method, because this is an important chapter, so we need to learn more. Transportation method is a deterministic method. The 2 points of production and distribution, you can call it, technically we call it either source or origin and destination. Now, what do the cells in the table represent? So, cells represent the routes, the path through which the products will be sent from one factory to the market or the stock or the depot. So, this is one of the major objective in the transportation problem, selection of the best route. How will you know that initial feasible solution in transportation problem has been reached? When all the demand and supply become zero. At that point, we know that we have reached the solution and we can calculate the optimal transportation cost. How will you know that the transportation problem is balanced? When demand, total demand, not just demand, total demand is equal to total supply. So, we have done it, we total add the supply side and the demand side and see if they are equal or not. How will the transportation be represented in OR model? So, obviously here Z is minimum and subject to demand, supply, subject to demand and supply constraints, demand, supply. These are the constraints. In every OR problem, there is going to be a constraint. So, in the case of OR problem, this is the constraints. Which cell is selected in the first in the northwest corner? It's based on the direction. It's the northwest corner cell, or in direction we can also write it's the uppermost left corner cell. After the selection of the cell, how is the next number selected to be placed in the cell? In the northwest corner method, we decided on the basis of next empty cell. How is the number selected to be placed? You look at the demand and supply, select the lesser number. Okay. After filling the number in the cell, what is the next step? Subtract the assigned number from corresponding demand and supply. Corresponding means just in line with the cell, not the down or up, but in line with the selected cell. So, you subtract it, one will become 0, the other will give some value, you will write it there. In the northwest corner method, how is the next cell selected? The second cell, the next empty cell. It may be down, it may be right. There are two choices only. Either you go down or you go right. Okay, so the next empty cell. In the least cost method, how are you going to select the first and next cell? On the basis of lowest cost in the cell. Okay, when the supply or demand side becomes 0, what should be done? What will you do? Cancel the other empty cells. That's a very important step to take in both methods, whether it is northwest or it is least cost. In both the cases, you must cancel the other empty cells. In the transportation method, one factory must supply the full number of demand to one market. Is it true or false? It is false because one factory can supply any number of products to one market, and one market can receive any number of product from one factory. So it can get its demand satisfied by two factories. So the answer is false. How do we calculate the total optimal transportation cost using northwest or least cost methods? How do we do it? First of all, we list all the filled cells, then multiply the assigned number with the cost per unit in the cell. Add all the products. Add all the products meaning the selected cells. Okay, so with this we complete the solution for all the 45 questions. I am sure all of you will do very well in the exam, and most of you will be able to get 100 out of 100 because it's easy. The only thing is you have to pay attention to the questions. Don't expect that the questions will be exactly the same as they are here. They will be different. You may have to apply some mind in some places. So, you can still ask questions, you can write your message, and as I said, do not disturb the invigilator. Okay, don't disturb the invigilator, don't ask any question to her, just pay attention to the questions, solve them. If there is any problem, you don't understand, the question is wrong, choices are wrong, just write it there on the question paper itself. Submit your question papers also. Submit your question papers as well as the answer sheet. Don't forget to do this. Question papers, write your ID and write your ID, section and name. Answer sheet, you have to write name, date, section. Okay, that's it. So all the best for your exams. I sign off now. I hope this recording will be enough for you. I hope this is better than we did in the class, because here you can pay more attention. Thank you. Thanks a lot.